Yes, they were alike in many ways, although interestingly enough, they were not close. Uh, my mother died back in 2009, but while I was with Rachel, they really weren't close. They had certain characteristics in common, and the biggest one, the most obvious one, is like their propensity to befriend gay men. And with my mother, that started after she and my father divorced. And she, I think, was going through a period where she, just didn't want to be entangled with men romantically and was kind of over them. And so her friends began to be a group of men that she trusted and who really sort of idolized her. And so I think one of the reasons that later on I was comfortable in the company of gay men is because I had been exposed to so many of them through my mother. She went through a period where, basically all of her friends were gay men. And so I never grew up with any of this sort of homophobic tendencies. They were just my mom's friends. So that when I met Rachel and another woman whose friends were almost exclusively gay men, it did not strike me as even unusual, to tell you the truth. And I was totally comfortable around them and found them, as I had found my mother's friends, totally accepting and charming and funny. And I saw this world that she had opened up for me as, these were also very successful men in Rachel's case. These were guys that had, I envied them in many ways. They had money. They appeared to be confident. They basically had the world in the palm of their hand. At least that's the way it seemed to me. And also, my Rachel was a extremely confident person, successful in her own right. And I think I was drawn to that confidence. And she was the kind of person that looked at the world, and the way I say it in the book is she saw the world as just a place of possibility rather than limits. And in that respect, she and my mother differed. My mother was not as confident and open-hearted, but also not terribly ambitious. And so I think people were drawn to my mother because she was so accepting of people. But she was also satisfied with her place in life. And Rachel never was. Rachel was highly ambitious, and so were her friends. And I think I was drawn to that world. So when I met Rachel and met her friends, I don't know, I describe it in the book as it felt as if I was standing outside, the nightclub outside the Velvet Rope, and the doorman looked at me and said, you're in. And so once I was in, I didn't want to come out. And that's essentially what the story is. There's a lot of excess, and there was this circuit party scene that was exploding at the time. It was sort of an international, loosely connected series of events that had started off as AIDS fundraisers, ironically enough, and had grown into these massive parties all over the world that had really sort of lost their altruistic roots and were now just sort of, hedonistic, over the top parties. A lot of fun, very intense, a lot of drug use, and it was a roller coaster. And we basically, the book begins when I meet Rachel, and it chronicles our, I don't know if you want to call it ascent or descent into that world, and that it ends basically 10 years later, at the beginning of the 2000s, when she and I split, and the sort of excesses of that lifestyle have caught up to us. And I felt like I had to get out. At that point, she'd been in rehab. It was clear that she was an addict, and in order to sort of save myself, I had to get out. So that's basically the shape of the story.